A big name free agent comes off the board, not to Cleveland, of course, but can that move finally help them add a bat to this lineup if they'll finally trade a prospect?
Tanner Bagley, the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is up, Guardians fans? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Guardians. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next half hour on Locked On Guardians, the only daily podcast that covers your team for the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. And of course, if you're new here, I'm Justin Lada, and I am one of your two co-hosts for 4 years now and counting. My friend and co-host Jeff Ellis, and I'm coming up on my 19th year covering the Guardians minor league system as a prospect, writer, and editor. Almost 2 decades. Wow. I'm not old.
Yeah. I started about the same time you did, so that means I'm coming on year 19. As you mentioned, I am Jeff Ellis. I have been here since Locked On started with baseball almost 7 years ago. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. Big shout out to all of our everydayers and to everyone who is joining us as an everydayer. We're getting close to 5.5K subscribes on YouTube, so let's keep bumping that up. iTunes review would be nice, but thank you to everyone who is joining us during a slow offseason for baseball and the Guardians in particular.
Yes, it is a mind-numbingly slow crawl. I was hoping after the Alex Bregman news that we would have more coming, and maybe we will, but I always think that's going to be the case, and then it just dies for a couple of days. Later on today's show, we'll get into what of the rest of the league thinks about the Guardians farm system and development. In a little bit, we're going to talk about the Guardians' reputation as prospect hoarders and how fair that is. And we start the episode today by debating if Nico Hoerner of the Cubs is on the block after they signed Alex Bregman, and if Cleveland could be involved. Before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and it's been wild, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, so visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So the Cubs landed a really nice bat for their lineup. Oh, and they're having Fan Fest this coming up week. That must be nice. And now they might have too many bats. They might trade one. I also don't know what that feels like. So what a great time to be in Chicago. And, the Guardians also host the Cubs, by the way, on opening day, April 3rd, only 10 years after the 2016 World Series. So just to take that knife and jab it in the back a little bit more.
I mean, yes, the Cubs are doing what a top 5 sized city should do. This bumps their payroll, by the way, to just below the luxury tax, takes them from 10 to 8. They passed the Boston Red Sox with this. Well, technically, actually, I think they now don't pass the Red Sox because it is deferred money, which is one of those things we'll have to talk about at some point in time, because unless the deferrals ever catch up, this is just another way for the rich to stay richer in baseball, is the crazy amount of deferrals we're seeing on every contract. And this is what I'd say about the Cubs. They are doing what, like I said, a big market team should do. They are in a fascinating position, though, because it's like, they just went out and got Edward Cabrera as well. But
yeah, great week.
But their team is all on 1-year contracts. That is a team where, like, they're going to have about 150 million coming off the book. Like, I think I texted Justin like 3 times. Oh, they got like 75, 100, 110, 120. Like, everyone's a free agent on that team. So they're going to be in this weird situation where a year from now, they're going to have like Alex Bregman and Matt Shaw and Edward Cabrera, and that's about it. So they've got a lot of flexibility. They're also a weird lineup too. Like, I look at that as a team where, like, Alex Bregman, you and I were having this discussion off air. He is the good, not great. Like, his 2 peak years happened to coincide with a lot of trash cans being hit and a lot of information being known to players. And since then, he has never approached those power numbers or come remotely close. Like I said, he's a good, borderline great player. I don't know who is the great player.
I don't really care about Alex Bregman. I care about whether or not the Cubs are going to trade somebody.
I don't think
whether or not it's going to be Horner. You don't think they're going to trade anybody?
No, because the reason the reason I would say, and then I'll let you speak. The reason I would say they're not going to trade either one is what I just talked about. They have everyone coming off the books, so they can't afford to trade Matt Shaw and having him as a super utility role. Go look at his Saman page. It was terrible. He was bad a year ago. He's barely played second base in the big leagues. Gives them a year to let him play a few positions, see if he can settle into second. Maybe he ends up being an outfielder. There was talk about doing that. So I think there's always the possibility of keeping him in that depth role because they're going to need depth in a year. And then, like I said, they don't have anyone really to replace Bregman at second. You can't put Shaw there if you're trying to contend. You just can't.
So Jeff just threw cold water on the entire show. He just decided, you know what? No, this doesn't make anybody available. There's no reason to even have this debate, this segment, and the show. So everybody enjoy the show. We'll be back on Wednesday. Thank you.
I texted you all this yesterday. You knew what my take was going to be. You knew where it'd be on this because
I could see the Cubs moving one of them because look, the Cubs still need pitching. Like Matthew Boyd's the top of their rotation. They added Cabrera. They're counting on Cade Horton. Imanaga's there. Tyone's there. They're hoping to get Steele back sometime midsummer. Like they still need another arm. They still need bullpen help. Like, well, I guess they don't need bullpen help. They've added quite a bit there.
They had a ton of relievers.
Maybe they don't necessarily need to make a trade. They definitely need starting pitching depth. So I don't know what that looks like for them. And I think they're more likely to hang on to Shaw because, like you said, they're going to need their depth. And for this year, he's cheaper than Nico Horner. So that helps them luxury tax wise, even though they're not over it, but they still could be. And that depends on, I think, some other things where if guys
they're about 5 million under. 5 million should be enough to keep them underneath.
It should be, but we'll see. I mean, Horner could return them a good package rather than let him walk for nothing. Like, because I don't think Nico Hoerner's a guy you give the qualifying offer to, right? So like, you're not going to recoup a draft pick for him. And God only knows what's going to happen this time next year, right? Like we probably are still in the throes of a lockout this time next year. So you could get something for him now. And see what happens.
Depth to replace him. Like there's just no, like when you talked about starters, you didn't even mention Javier Assad and Colin Ray, who they also like. They have depth at the starting position. They have depth
a little bit.
They don't have depth up the middle. Like that's why they can't make that trade. It's like James Triantos is the next guy up, and like I know some people are still fans, but like that's not encouraging. Like they just don't have the depth to make that deal. Like this roster feels locked in to me.
It could be. It very much could be. I don't know. There's debate about whether or not they're going to. I mean, we know in the past that Cleveland has checked in on Nico Horner. I saw a report that the Yankees have reached out about Nico Horner. I mean, it would be a great addition for Cleveland, no doubt. It would be a guy that would make sense for Cleveland for a year as a stopgap because he could play second base for them. He could hit second. He's right-handed, and I know he doesn't add power. I think I talked about him last week or 2 weeks ago on a solo show. And he doesn't really address the need. Like, yes, there's no power there, but they need a right-handed hitter who can play up the middle infield, who isn't Gabriel Arias. And for 1 year, he's not blocking anybody.
I think they're content with Arias. I got to be honest. I think they are content to go defense first.
I'm not content with Gabriel Arias. I don't care. I'm not content with it. I don't want to go into another season having to know that Arias and Rocky are the combination until June when Baseman comes up. Like I maybe Brito supplants one of them. I don't know. I'm not content with it. I can't watch that combination for another year. I just can't.
Well, get ready.
It's not good. And it's not good. And it's not serious. They're not a serious team if those two guys are there.
I think you can because of defense. Again, it's better to have defense.
This team doesn't need better defense.
That's what made them good down the stretch. It was the defense.
They were bottom 5 offensively, Jeff. They don't need better defense. They need to hit. Neither of those guys are good hitters. Nico Horner
was solid when he came back.
Stop it.
Horner isn't anything special. Horner is a league
I'm not suggesting he is. That's how low the bar is.
But that's what Rocchio showed in the second half was Horner-esque.
No, it's not.
It was like Horner is a 739 OPS. Rocchio in the second half
talk about track records. You always talk about track records, and you want to see guys back it up for multiple years. Nico Horner has backed it up for multiple years. He is a guy who hits 7 to 10 homers, steals 20 to 30 bases, plays excellent defense. He's a great clubhouse guy, which is probably why the Cubs won't trade him, honestly. He's a quite great. Everything here suggests to fit. If the Guardians have talked to the Cubs about Nico Horner before, and he's only got 1 year left. So, like, he can't block anybody. Like, if you want to move Baseman up and play second, Nico Horner is not an ideal shortstop, but he's played before. So you're not necessarily blocking anybody if you make that move. I would want Cleveland involved in Nico Horner discussions if he's available. I don't know if he is for sure. I think the question really is, what does it take to get him if he is, and what do the Cubs need? So we can discuss more of that in a second. We also have to discuss a survey of MLB executives. They've decided the Guardians are the biggest prospect hoarders. Is that fair? Is that accurate? That's coming up next. The NFL wild card weekend is here, and I said before, it has been a very wild weekend in the NFL, and it's in play. FanDuel is in playoff mode, so every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers to even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day is FanDuel users getting a profit boost pack waiting for you inside the app. So each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. You can apply the bets you like the most. So you open that pack, right? The first thing on game day you see, it boosts what you want to apply. And then you can lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play. I know Josh Allen was kind of banged up, but the Bills won. So, that's still in there. And it gives you more juice on bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. So it's a fun new way to enjoy the NFL playoffs. Enjoy responsibly. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Appreciate you all hanging out with us here on Locked On Guardians, as always, making us part of your daily routine. We love talking ball with you every single day, or at least 3 days a week until February. You're an everydayer, and you live your team, your Guardians, every day. Take it up a level, go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Guardians with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, where it's at, and more for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, so we're going to wrap up the discussion on Nico Horner because Jeff decided Nico Horner wasn't worth it, or he won't be traded, and the Guardians' offense is actually great, and you don't have to change
Don't put
anything.
words in my mouth.
They're going to win the World
just,
Series this year because offense isn't their
That's not
problem.
what I'm saying. I'm just saying that defense matters. Horner is a.
I'm not saying it doesn't. And he's a great
average
defender.
bat. He is. He's a great defender. He'd be an upgrade. He's a decidedly average bat, and more than anything else, I just can't see why the Cubs would move him. If you want to talk about a team that would be not serious, it'd be the Cubs to trade him. If you're going to be a top 8 payroll, makes no sense for them to flip him out. Like, it just doesn't.
It's possible. I just wonder if they feel like there's another part of the roster they want to improve. And I know you said they don't have the middle infield depth to. I mean, maybe they can move Michael Bush back to second and start Tyler Austin. They signed him. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just
that ship sailed. But I don't think Bush has played second base since like his first few years in
college.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember he was heavily linked to the Guardians in that draft.
I had him in my shadow draft to go into the Guardians.
Did you? Yeah, would have been a great pick. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, the question is, I think you're right. Like, does it make sense in the trade Nico Horner? I don't know that it does necessarily, but teams are going to call and ask. They're going to try. And it's really interesting to think about what it would even take to get the Cubs to consider it. Like, what else they'd be targeting. Like, from the Guardians side of things, like you can't convince them to take Logan Allen because he's better than Logan Allen even for 1 year, and they don't need that kind of starter. Like, Logan Allen isn't the kind of player that the Cubs need to help them. He's nice depth, so I don't know like what they're going to be asking. I don't know that I'd give up Logan Allen for the Guardians anyway because he's got multiple years of control, and Nico Horner's only got one. And like, I think you could reasonably say you can offer the Cubs one of your comp picks, but I don't know. Like, I also don't think they're going to be looking for a prospect.
You've only got the
either,
comp
so.
A. I wouldn't. You'd be trading the 30th pick in the draft. You can't trade the 30th pick in the draft for Nico Horner.
Well, yeah, you're right because the Baltimore did it 2 years ago for Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns is decidedly better than Nico Horner, and pitching's more valuable. So yeah. That's a tough one. You're right. So probably if a team wants to get him, they would have to give up a comp B pick plus a major league player. And I guess, you're right. The 30th pick for the Guardians doesn't make sense. And I just don't know if the Guardians have a piece on their roster. I advocated trading for him a few weeks ago, and I still want to trade for him. It's just, if you look at what the Cubs need, I think we run into the issue of there's a very hard fit here that do the Guardians even have a match? Like, they've talked in the past, but that was when Nico Horner had 2-3 years of control left. And now he's got 1 year left. The Cubs are in a different position than they were. So I don't necessarily know there's a match there in terms of what the Cubs want or need and what the Guardians are willing to give up for a 1-year rental for Nico Horner.
Fair.
Yeah. And I know some people are going to say, well, it's because the Guardians are prospect hoarders, Justin. And the MLB executives who participated in the MLB Pipeline survey agree. 34% of executives that were surveyed, I don't know how many were surveyed. They didn't say how many. We also got to get into who they surveyed, or at least guessing who they were, because that's also part of this context, by the way. But 34% of the people who were surveyed called the Guardians the biggest prospect hoarders in the sport. Next place and second was Pittsburgh at 9%. So there was a 24% gap between Cleveland and Pittsburgh for prospect hoarding. That's a pretty significant gap, by the way. Like I was kind of blown away at the gap more than anything. Like I expected Cleveland to be voted number one there. And I think what I think that says is what we already have confirmed. I think that is colored by the fact that MLB executives think the Guardians are hard to negotiate with because they set that line and they don't move from it. They set their value. I think they overvalue their prospects. So the fact that they don't trade them because they have a higher value on them or they set a certain value and don't budge, I think that's what makes other executives call them prospect hoarders. I think it's probably more their approach than it is they want to keep all their prospects. Like I don't think that's what it says. I think people got to understand what it actually means. Like I think a lot of people are interpreting that as, oh, the Guardians never want to trade their prospects because they think they're all going to be good. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just they have a higher valuation on what they want to get back for them, and that makes them hard to deal with, which we've heard before.
So I don't take any of this thing very seriously because the whole thing was like screamed recency bias. It screamed.
Doesn't mean it's accurate. It just means it's accurate more recently.
It's interesting, but it's like there's also some bits where I like straight out tell Justin, I'm like, well, people are lying because everyone's like the best prospect. No one had to miss. It's some tech issues. Not sure what happened there, but I was just pointing out, like when you look at the prospect section, it's kind of funny to compare it to years past and see like they're in the past. Some of these front office people were more willing to talk about maybe some misses, some guys who weren't huge prospects, but we don't see that. The really interesting thing is if you go back to 2024, it was Orioles at 27, the Guardians at 23. Last year, the Orioles at 18, the Guardians at 16. The Orioles finally made one trade. They did the Shane Baz trade, and all of a sudden they go all the way down to 4.5%. And essentially everyone just threw it all on Cleveland. It's like, well, Baltimore did that Baz trade, so we can't do Baltimore anymore. So you just combined Cleveland and Baltimore's numbers the past 2 years together. And that's what you got there. I also thought it was kind of funny that Colorado, for whatever reason, slipped in the rankings this year. I'm like, they haven't traded for anyone. Like, why are they all of a sudden moving down?
Well, they don't have
rankings?
Prospects to hoard, except
I
for,
guess. The Pirates have been pretty consistently third. It's been Cleveland and Baltimore. And I mean, I think that's just got to be the way of life for a small market team. They have to be able to set a firm value, and that's the thing. They win most of their trades. They do come out ahead in most trades. And, I think knowing the cost of things and not budging and being like, okay, they have to be successful via their draft and development and international market, which the other funny thing in this is, by the way, like the last 3 years, the last 3 years, Cleveland's been ranked best international and best at developing hitters, by the way, got votes in both those categories. So take this for what you will. I'm not going to sit here and say they don't prospect hoard because they do, but I think they also have to. I think that's just got to be a way of life. But it is really funny to look at past years and be like, okay, Baltimore made one big trade, so now people can't pick Baltimore, so they default to Cleveland. Baltimore was number one the previous 2 years before. It's also funny to see the things about how Baltimore's been the best at drafting in multiple surveys over those last 2 years. And then Baltimore's drafts have yielded that organization nothing. So if you go back and you look at the last 2 years, it actually makes MLB execs look like they have no idea what they're talking about. Like when they talk about who the top prospects are, it's like Jackson Holiday, right? Who has not been successful. It's Baltimore being the kings of the draft. Their drafts have been terrible. Like it actually makes MLB execs look like they have no idea what they're doing.
All right, you said a couple interesting things there, especially when it comes to the Guardians and hoarding, and also how they have to win in trades. I got some thoughts on that, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Plus, what else MLB executives think about the Guardians system and player development. The offseason is definitely coming to a close here. I mean, we're going to have pitchers and catchers reporting in about a month here. So if you want to keep up to date with all things Guardians, the rest of this offseason, a move they may or may not make at some point, whatever they do from here to spring training, and of course, in spring training, you hit the bell on YouTube for the Locked On Guardians channel. You get notified of the newest episode, whether it's 3 days a week, 5 days a week, or we do reaction videos or any clips from the show. You'll get notified of those right to your phone. Or if you auto download wherever you get your favorite podcasts, we are free everywhere. You keep the show in your feed no matter what you're doing, whether you're hitting the gym or walking the dog, doing the dishes. Love to hang out with you and talk Guardians baseball while you're doing all those things. Make it a little more enjoyable, even when Jeff and I are arguing or talking about things that will or won't happen. So a couple of interesting things you said there before, I thought, about having to win trades. So again, I think this survey, which, by the way, like I think you're right about recency bias. I do think you're right about that. But that doesn't mean it's not accurate. It just means it's more accurate recently and doesn't hold up every single year. I think it doesn't say anyone in the survey who is the biggest prospect hoarder in the last decade. There's decade questions, but that one specifically doesn't say a time frame. So it is just asking them right now. I would think that's how they're responding. So I don't think you're wrong. There's a level of recency bias to that, but doesn't mean it's not accurate currently. But the Guardians do feel like they have to win all these trades. And I don't think that's wrong either, because they do. They can't afford to have too many Junior Camaneros and Tobias Myers trade. Even if that was, the hindsight of 2020, we were talking off air about that. Even if that's the case, like they still can't afford to do that too often, because they really could use him, right now, even if it was highly improbable. But I think they have to be careful about, like, we have to get so much value back in this trade. We have to do this or that in the trade, because then you just end up not improving your team and you end up holding on to prospects too long. They don't pan out, and then you get nothing out of either side of them. I think the other issue is they also have to have prospects other teams want. This is the issue we've been talking about for a couple of years now. Like, go back to the Sean Murphy and the Matt Olson deals. Like, the Athletics just didn't want the Guardians prospects. They didn't want what they were selling. They wanted a Ruiz. And look, the Athletics got nothing from those trades. Like, Ruiz is gone.
Okay,
Shea Langoliers. They got Shea Langoliers. That's been it. Like, everybody else has been. Kristen Pache is on like his fourth team. Ruiz is on his fourth.
They got nothing for Murphy at all.
Yeah, so the other teams preferred the Braves. They preferred the Braves prospects or whoever else is the Orioles or the Brewers prospects. I don't know why I got so many teams confused there. And that doesn't mean they were right or wrong. I mean, they were wrong because those prospects ended up being horrible. But they didn't want what the Guardians were selling, and the Guardians have to have prospects that their teams want and tools they want, but you also have to have the same value, which is why it takes two people to make a trade. And Guardians have a higher value on their guys. The other thing too that I don't love about this voting thing, and without taking it too seriously, if the Guardians were rated as like one of the best 5 farm systems and they also were called the biggest prospect hoarders, I wouldn't really necessarily have an issue with it, because other teams say, okay, they're hoarding their prospects, but they're also saying, well, they have one of the best 5 farm systems, but they don't. They didn't even get a vote in this survey for one of the best farm systems in the league right now. That's what I think bothers me the most, is that if they are hoarders, which they are, I'd like them to be getting a vote for one of the best systems in the game, and they don't have it. They did get 6.8% for the most underrated farm system, so I guess that's like a nice silver lining to that. I don't know, but the rest of the voting was kind of goofy. Like 4.7% for international market, best use of the international market. I talked last week about how the Guardians do a terrible job in the international market because they don't go for pitching, and their best international players. They shouldn't, but it's like Valera and Noel and Rocchio and Martinez, like those guys all made the majors. If you're saying, hey, they turned those guys into major leaguers, sure, but look at the money they wasted on Junior San Quentin and Gabriel Rodriguez. Like, didn't work out, and none of the guys on their team except for Jose Ramirez are stars from that market. They're not even average regulars. They're bench players or depth pieces at best. Agreed. Which is goofy.
Yeah, but the whole list is goofy. It's just very sorry. I'm not sure what the tech issue is going tonight. I'll say the lists are goofy, and what's really goofy with it is, even opposed to like last year's list, where someone said the best prospect they ever saw was Trot Nixon, who turned into an okay, but not like a star player. It felt like even
Trot
though
Nixon?
yeah, someone
Last
said
decade?
someone said Trot Nixon. Like Cliff Lloyd was a name in there last year. I was looking at the
Oh,
list.
wow.
Now no one can afford to have anything other than a home, even though it's anonymous. Every single person is a home run swing in terms of best prospect they ever saw, best amateur they saw. It's very weird in general. It's just, even though it's anonymous, it feels like people are afraid to be wrong. There's so many things. Like, I mean, gosh, I remember the hype. Jason Dominguez was a solid player for the Yankees a year ago. He was, the underlying data isn't great, but he put up a solid year. But based on his hype, like, he could be a guy that people will talk about. Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to watch. And again, I don't understand how you can list Cleveland as one of the best international teams. I mean, I guess maybe you give them credit for Caminero, and it's like, hey, Caminero and Jose, and that's about it. But it really has not been there for them. And the international guys who are on this roster who were successful, the guys who were suspended it's not like those have been internal guys. Most of their international players have been. And just so I don't get myself in trouble, the reason I said they shouldn't go for pitching is when I did the deep dive, most of your really good pitchers come from college ranks, then high school ranks, very few internationally. And then international hitting is where, that is a group where you're seeing more and more success. So I agree with that approach. I don't necessarily know if their, contact at all costs approach is correct, but It is a weird list to look at, I got to say, when you really, especially if you look at past years and really dive deep.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking through text message when this actually came out. We were like 0% chance anybody on the Guardians participated in this. Like, when they sent a survey out, I guarantee not a single Guardians front office member participated in the survey. And executive could mean anything. It could mean director of player development. It could be assistant GM. It could be, president of baseball operations. It could mean a lot of things.
A regional scout.
Yeah. This is anybody in the front office. So yeah, it could even be a scout. So those are things you have to take with a grain of salt too. That it's not necessarily GMs. It's not necessarily, the Chris Antonettis. It could be a lot of guys in any organization. So I thought it was interesting too. They only got some votes for how well they do receiving prospects and trade. I think they did pretty well. I guess they deserve votes, and I'm not gonna dive too much into who else got votes there, but like, I think that's fair because they do pretty well in receiving prospects and trades.
Tampa wins that every year by a mile. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
every year they win that by a mile, even though
because they are the best at. Let's be honest, they are.
They have been, but it's because we also ignore their misses, like Ranger Suarez, right? Like a lot of those things, like Tampa's misses tend to get papered over because they've had so many successes.
Right, which is you're not going to bat 1,000, but they're definitely batting 300. That's the thing is Cleveland. I don't know what they're batting, but Tampa Bay's not batting 1,000 because nobody does, but they bat 300, and that's why it's easy to paper over the rest of their misses because it's very hard to be even better. They did get 15 almost 16% for pitcher development, so that's good. That means that other front offices do still think the Guardians develop pitching very well, so take that. The Dodgers, Mets, and the Mariners finished ahead of them, which is also, I think, totally fair. I don't have any issue with that. The Mets, that's recency bias because the Mets have a great pitching group in the system right now. They've got, Jonah Tong and McLean and Christian Scott, so not really shocking there. The Mariners, they have a lot of dudes everybody likes. They also, you mentioned before, they got votes for developing hitters, the best at developing hitting prospects, which I don't think anybody listening to this would ever vote for them on that. So I'm not really sure where that comes from.
And they got him last year too. So
right. And again, they're a bottom 5 offense, Jeff. I want to tell you that they're a bottom 5 offense. So they're a bad offense. I thought it was interesting that Uniker Caceres and Angel Hanau got votes for breakout prospects in 2026. So I'm excited for that. Like, other teams seem to think that Uniker Caceres has something, even though there's some underlying data there I don't love about him. I thought Angel Hanau had a breakout in 2024, but he's not a known commodity yet. So I hope he has a resurgence to me in 2026. And then I do love that Bazzana got votes for best hit tool, most usable power, and rookie of the year. Those are all things I think you and I think are realistic. I don't know about rookie of the year, but usable power and best hit tool, I think are somewhere he's in the discussion of. And then DeLauder got votes for most usable power, which I think you may not agree with because you don't love the swing.
I think there's power, even if it's,
usable.
I just think he cuts himself off a bit. Like I'll be curious to see how it develops, but I do think there is usable power. I don't know if it's going to be 30 home run power, but like I can.
It's definitely going to be usable, and he got some votes for Rookie of the Year too, which would be hilarious because you got to play over 100 games to win Rookie of the Year at least. So maybe there's an MLB executive scout out there that thinks that maybe someone from the Guardians did participate and said he got a vote for Rookie of the Year because they're the only people that think he can play over 100 games, probably.
Well, that's the one who voted them for hit tool and international signings as well. So I
that
think
would
we
be
have
who it
fun.
is. Yeah. Maybe a Guardians front office member did participate in the survey after all, because I can't imagine anybody voting for international or hitting. Hitting would be more unlikely than international. I kind of wonder how all these teams judge international, by the way, because like, if you talk about like, not Rodriguez, he was a draft pick, but the Henals or the Martinez's and the Noels.
Recency bias. They've had a few more
recency
make it.
bias, but like, are you evaluating success as, hey, they got this guy at age, a lot of these guys agree to deals at age 14 when they're not supposed to. You get these guys at 16 in your system, and by 22 or 23, they're major leaguers if they make it. Are you saying, well, it's a win if they get Noel or Martinez or those guys to the majors and they produce anything? Are you calling that a win? Because like we talk about the draft, we say, hey, if your first round pick makes the majors and has some sort of measurable impact, we call that a win, right? So are they evaluating international the same way, or are we talking about like Fernando Tatis Jr.? Like I guess it's two different grading curves is what I'm wondering here is how are they viewing success, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. I can't give you a good answer. I feel like success for an international guy has to be at least like a useful player, whether it's a backup or a reliever or something like that. And that's where, like, I mean, Rocchio is that. He's at least a backup, right? You feel pretty comfortable about that.
Too.
Martinez is probably at least a utility guy. Like, they've had some more success in that regard.
Okay, we could call that successful. Yeah, like, Gonzalez had a brief blip there where he helped the team, so I guess I'll call that a win for development.
Yeah.
Noel hit one of the biggest home runs in franchise playoff history. So like 100%. I guess we'll call that. Yeah, I guess we'll call those. Okay, I could soften my stance on the international thing from that perspective because it is hard to bring in. Yeah, top 5 seems like a lot. I think if you are realistic and say like if you sign a 16-year-old and you get him to the majors and he makes some sort of measurable impact, I guess you can call that a win. But he's not, Fernando Tatis or any of those guys. So we'll see. All right. Well, I think we've exhausted the discussion on this survey. It was hilarious. Let us know what you think about the votes. Let us know what you think about Nico Hoerner and how good the Guardians offense is and if the Cubs are going to make a trade. So thank you for tuning in to Locked On Guardians. I'll be back with you on Wednesday. We'll talk about some graduated prospects from 2025, what to expect in 2026. I'll talk about some stats and evaluation markers that I'm using with them. So make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Guardians to get the latest episodes. Never miss an episode. That means that Every Day Our Club is built for you. Get on Locked On Guardians ad-free plus members only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com to join the club. We'll be back in your feeds whenever the Guardians make a move or make any news. And please subscribe, download, leave a review, all that kind of fun stuff.
Thank you all for joining, and go Guardians, go.